Not too long ago, my partner and I were sitting in the front room coming up with video ideas for my channel when they jokingly suggested it'd be kind of funny and interesting if I took 8 Frontier flights back to back. Now, when it comes to the budget airlines here in the US, we know that Frontier and Spirit are definitely the top 2 contenders for being the worst. Between all of Frontier's hidden fees, cancellations, delays, small tray tables, and just known for being one of the worst airlines unless you just want to get from point A to point B as cheap as possible with bringing as little as possible, Frontier is not an airline many of us would suggest. Between my own sense of adventure and what some might call self-loathing, I decided I had to do it. It being take 8 Frontier flights in less than 48 hours. So with that, I got to researching. So in order to plan this flight path out, I wanted to make this as cheap as possible while also making sure I had as many flights as possible. So the first thing that I said is that I wanted to keep all of the flights under $70. Now, one thing that Frontier is really good at is having flights as low as $19 to $29 sometimes for one-way tickets. So this was perfect. Since all of my flights were going to be one way, I knew that the budget side of this would be very simple. The biggest and most important thing to keep in mind with this trip for myself was making sure that I had enough time between flights to account for any potential delays or even my worst nightmare, a cancellation. Now, after doing some research here in the US, it seems that the average flight delay is as low as 15 minutes and on the high end average as much as 2 hours. Now, there are some delays that can go much longer or even shorter, but on average, my delay time was going to be somewhere between 15 minutes and 2 hours. Now, another thing that I had going for me, which I thought was really nice, is when I looked up Frontier's statistics last year for how many cancellations they had, only 2.87% of their flights were canceled, which honestly is pretty good odds. Now, when it comes to cancellations and delays, sometimes they can be the airline's fault, sometimes they can be the airport's fault, and sometimes they can just be Mother Nature's fault. So with those in mind, it was time to plan out what flights I would be taking. So my first flight would be from Denver to Las Vegas. Then from Las Vegas, I would shoot up to San Francisco. Then I would go back down again to Las Vegas, where then I would go across the country over to Orlando. From Orlando, I would go up to Atlanta, Atlanta down to San Antonio, Texas, then San Antonio back again to Las Vegas before jumping on my final flight back home. That's right, I was going to be in Las Vegas 3 separate times. Viva Las Vegas, baby! But here's how the trip went. It was off to the races, and it started off great. Not only did I have to sprint through the economy parking lot, but I also had to sprint in order to make sure I made it to security with more than enough time. Thankfully, not only was security brief, but I was able to easily walk to my gate. On the overhead gate marker, though, it said Las Vegas, but when I looked at the screen behind the counter, it said San Diego. I'm not going to San Diego, so that can't be good.
It's funny to me that I'm still waiting on my first flight, and I already got delay number 1. So, we're off to a banger start.
But since I had some time to kill, I went to the Denver outside viewing area, had a snack, and finally boarded the plane. And after an hour-and-a-half flight, I was touching down in Vegas. After disembarking, I walked to my next gate and passed enough slot machines that I think could fill a real casino. One of which was this Uncanny Valley Gene Wilder that was staring back at me. I think all the slot machines reminded me that I was gambling on all of these flights, and the first delay wasn't keeping me hopeful. Then I had a slice of pizza, hopped on the next leg of my journey, and experienced a ton of turbulence as well as this delightful noise. Then I was in San Francisco, where I was planning on actually leaving the airport for the one and only time on this journey. So I took the air train, which we ended up getting kicked off of, and then it took about 15 minutes for the next one to show up, but after that, I finally was able to get down to the car rental area. Unfortunately, not only were there no cars available, but there were tons and tons of people there trying to rent a car, so I turned around and went right back to security.
I'm embarrassed and ashamed to call myself a frequent traveler because I just made the #1 mistake you should never make. I left security in order to try to rent a car. That didn't turn out so well. So when I was going back through security, I forgot to dump my water bottle. So I had to go all the way back through the security line. So, minus 10 points for me, for being dumb.
On the way though, I lost my favorite Red Sox neck pillow. So after unfortunately having to buy a new neck pillow, I had to sit on the tarmac for my second delay. It was a maintenance issue that took a little over an hour to fix, and after a pretty uneventful flight, I landed back in the Las Vegas airport for the second time. I said hello to my old friend Willy Wonka with his almost human eyes. Then I asked a lady to film me next to the Las Vegas sign, but she cut my head off. So...
This airport is playing Living La Vida Loca, and I have not stepped outside of an airport in over 12 hours, and I've only done 3 flights. Living La Vida Loca. So after that, I decided to kill some time at the gate, and then I boarded my flight for number 3, which was my red eye, all the way to Orlando. It was a rough one, and I gotta admit that I was starting to get a little loopy. I got off the plane behind this guy who, no hate, has a bag that I reviewed not too long ago that I would definitely not recommend. At the Orlando airport though, I did a quick freshen up and then headed over to Starbucks with all the other caffeine addicted sheep because holy crap, look at this line. I counted and there were 34 people in front of me at Starbucks. So after getting my coffee and then being able to relax for just a little bit, it was flight number 4 to Atlanta. To whoever decided to vape in the bathroom, look what you did. But actually, to whoever works in the flight industry, can you please tell me what this was? Please and thanks. An hour and a half later and I was in Atlanta, so I decided to grab some Michael D's. Maybe I was a little delusional, but this automatic napkin dispenser was not only something I'd never seen, but extremely fascinating for me. But unfortunately, it was also in Atlanta where I received some bad news. So I'm currently in Atlanta airport, getting ready to fly to San Antonio, where then I connect to Las Vegas, and then I go home. I got an email about 20 minutes ago. Frontier canceled the flight. And not only did they cancel the flight, they booked me a new flight that leaves 26 hours later than my original scheduled flight. So I went out into the ticketing counters here in Atlanta to see if maybe they could help me, maybe, change the flight, maybe just give me one that goes directly home from San Antonio, something like that. And they said they couldn't help me here. They can't help me until I get to San Antonio. So at the risk of not getting home and being stranded in San Antonio, Texas for 26 hours, I'm just gonna have to buy a flight that leaves from San Antonio back home, or hope that maybe Frontier can help me. But at the rate that I'm going with 3 delays and now a cancellation, I'm over 50% having things go wrong on this trip. So I think my best bet might just be to buy a flight and not get to go to Vegas, which I really wanted to play that weird, creepy Willy Wonka slot machine and see how many Oompa Loompas I could win. I'm assuming that's the currency. I didn't check, and now I won't get to. But yeah, I can't say I'm surprised. It's Frontier. This is what I signed up for. I signed up to see how bad it could be, and the answer is pretty bad. That's the answer so far. Pretty bad.
Then the bad news continued as my flight to San Antonio was delayed for the first time. However, it was an opportunity to get some iced coffee from my favorite coffee shop, Caribou Coffee. And the bad news continued as once we got on the plane, then we were hit with yet another delay while we continued to just sit and wait on the tarmac. Once I finally landed in San Antonio, I met some new friends, and then I found a t-shirt that I think really encompasses wine mom energy, but for dads, of which I am neither.
So I went to the front desk. Not much that can go on, so I just bought my ticket on the next flight from San Antonio to Denver, Colorado. So unfortunately, the title of this video is going to end up being a little bit of a lie because I'm only going to get 7 flights instead of 8, but still coming in under 48 hours. I did 7 flights in about 39 hours is what we're going to end up with, which is still quite an accomplishment in my mind. And because we're in San Antonio, before we finish this out, I also want to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Gravel. Now, Gravel's an incredible company. I love working with Lance over there. He's an incredible dude, and they make incredible products like their domestic duffel, their 11-liter day bag, which I'm currently using on this trip, as well as their toiletry kits and their travel blankets, and so much more. So right now, if you use discount code ODIE over at gravel.com, link down below, you can get, it's either 10 or 15% off. I can't remember what Lance told me. Apologies, but you do get a discount on some of their stuff. I highly recommend their domestic duffel. I highly recommend their toiletry kits. I'm using their Slim right now on this, so I don't smell like stinky poo-poo. So head over to Gravel. Thanks again for them sponsoring this video, making it possible for me to buy 8 plane tickets to test this out.
So with 6 flights under my belt and 1 more to go, I grabbed one last bite of airport food and got ready for the last leg of this insane journey. With it almost over, I was feeling pretty accomplished at this point. And not long after, I was able to finally land back in Denver, and as I walked through the passage to get to the parking lot, I was not only happy to be getting back to my bed, but I also knew exactly how I felt about Frontier. Okay, now that I'm back and I've actually had a good night's sleep instead of just sleeping on airplanes, let's talk about it. First off, do I recommend doing this? No. 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 It's not practical, obviously, and it's also not a really good way to see the US. Not to mention the fact this many flights was extremely stressful the entire time. Not because of the flying and being stuck in the airport, but because there was obviously delays and, my worst nightmare, a cancellation. The first delay from Denver to Las Vegas was because the flight attendants were late. So it's not really Frontier's fault all the way, so we'll say half a point. Then there was the delay on San Francisco back to Las Vegas where we were on the tarmac getting ready to take off, and then a maintenance issue popped up where we sat on the tarmac for over an hour, minus a million points. I hate sitting on the tarmac. It's my least favorite kind of delay, especially when I have a window seat and my claustrophobia starts to set in a little bit. The third and fourth delay both came from the Atlanta to San Antonio flight, where the first delay was just waiting to get on the plane, and then the second delay happened when we were already on the plane. So two different delays, two different reasons, over 2 hours of sitting there waiting for my flight. In Atlanta, this is also where I found out about my cancellation, which, like I said in my clip, they decided to schedule me on a new flight 26 hours later. So I inevitably ended up just buying a new ticket that left freight from San Antonio to Denver in order to get home and not be stuck in a San Antonio airport for 26 hours, because that would actually be a nightmare. And then the final delay was from San Antonio back to Denver, which they said had something to do with weather, but I'm not 100% sure because unfortunately I had my headphones on and was about to fall asleep just waiting for the flight to start in general. Now, altogether, we ended up with 5 total delays and 1 cancellation for the 8 booked flights. Now, given the fact that even though one of those delays was not technically Frontier's fault, it's still not the best odds. So I would say at the end of the day, if you're looking for an airline that's cheap and can get you from point A to point B really quick, you don't need to bring a lot of stuff, and you don't care what seat you sit in because all of their seats cost like $29 or more, then Frontier is a great way to take maybe a nice little weekend trip, which, funny enough, on one of my flights is what the couple next to me was doing. They were actually flying to Vegas for just one day to see a concert because the tickets were super cheap, and then they were flying back. So if you want to do something like that, I think Frontier is great. But I will say if you're looking for a little bit more of a reliable airline, then maybe Frontier is not the best bet for you, as they are prone to a lot more cancellations and delays than I've seen with other airlines in my experience of flying pretty much full time for the last 4 years. I would still highly recommend looking at like United, Southwest, or Delta here in the United States. Yes, those tickets are going to be more, but I mean, with what you get with a United ticket and a Delta ticket, being able to bring a personal item and a carry-on, that right there with Frontiers is over $100 if you want both of those, and a seat ticket. Whereas with like United and Delta, you can pick a free seat, maybe towards the back of the plane, but at least you're in charge of what seat you get, and you get a personal item and a carry-on, which to me is a no-brainer, especially for those one-bag travelers out there that like to pack a little bit more minimally. So at the end of the day, that was not only an exhausting experience, but an extremely rewarding experience, as I got to see just how much can go wrong when you take 7 flights in about 40 hours. So with all of that, thank you guys so very much for all the love and support. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all of that wonderful nonsense. And with all of that being said, I will see you next time. Maybe I should do this next year with Spirit Airlines.